Good morning, Jason.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Jafar. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for the invite.
Good morning, Austin. I think for the sake of time, and I know our dean is a little bit busy. She has another meeting today. Raymond, I think we can start. So I would like to welcome everybody to our risk mitigation virtual workshop. So Dean Lemoine is with us. Thank you for your time. I would like to invite you to give us the welcome remarks for our first in series. This is our workshop. Dr. Lemoine.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Sharab, and thank you for all being here this morning. I'm excited to be here to welcome you to the first workshop of this type. I want to thank Raymond Kelly for the presentation that he's going to provide, and to Dr. Al-Sharab and the other faculty members in the Department of Engineering Technology. This is such an important piece of who we are as a university. Many of you are on our advisory council and understand the importance of us preparing our students for the workforce, but a larger piece of that is our interaction with our industry partners, not only in preparation for our students migrating into your particular industries, but also what we can do to help your industries succeed. And I think this is a great step in that direction. So we're really excited to be able to offer a workshop of this sort. There are so many of us that are trying to figure out what our new normal is going to be, and many things that we all need to consider, things that we aren't prepared for, and having some expert advice on what we can do to mitigate risk in our particular workplace is going to be really important. So I commend Mr. Kelly and Dr. Al-Sharab and the other faculty in the engineering technology department who are assisting with this, and I know that it's going to be a great benefit to you all. We hope that this is the first of many types of workshops and interactions that we have with you all, and that this is the start of a great collaboration between Northwestern State and our industry partners. So I hope that it is enjoyable and informational, and that it's a great experience for all of you. As Dr. Al-Sharab mentioned, I have another meeting that I need to attend, but I did want to be here and welcome all of you, and I hope that it's a great session. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Lemoine. So I forgot to mention this lecture or this workshop is recorded. So I'm recording this workshop. And also, I am Department Head of Engineering Technology at Northwestern State University. I'm Dr. Jafar Al-Sharab. I was the one who was doing all the communication with you. In our department, we have 2 degree programs. It's small. We have Industrial Engineering Technology and we have Electronic Engineering Technology. Under the Electronic Engineering Technology, we have electronics concentration and we have biomedical concentration. So this is just a quick interview about our department. So let me introduce our speaker for today. So Mr. Raymond Kelly is a global operational excellence leader with over 40 years of experience in manufacturing and supply chain operations as an industrial and consulting practitioner with career spanning over 20 countries and diversified array of industries. So Ray has authored 2 books on relevant subjects: optimizing your supply chain performance, how to assess and improve your company's strategy and execution capabilities. And also the second book is the myths and truths of lean transformation, how to successfully make the transition from theory to effective deployment. Ray has recently joined our department as an adjunct professor, so we welcome him also aboard. He'll be teaching some courses for us and he'll be advising us. will be benefiting from his long industry experience and how to prepare our students for the workforce. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Ray to start the workshop. Ray, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. You see my screen okay now?
Yes.
Okay, you hear me okay?
Yep.
My screen's not moving, okay. So Dr. Farr has already given an introduction to me. Like I said, really, I've got 40 years experience, across 23 countries. I've done over 100 lean or business transformation projects. So really, I mean, I'll just get into it. So the information I'm really sharing here in this presentation is based a lot on my perspective and really my personal experiences. And living and working in Asia for 20 years, you really get a real hands-on approach to risk mitigation. Because as I go through here, I've experienced about every kind of disruption that you can. So you really have to be resilient and prepare for the unknown. So for today's workshop, our objective is not so much to talk about the theoretical aspects of risk mitigation, but to look at the how-tos, how to actually initiate your own risk mitigation activity, and to build resilience in your supply chain. Okay, so we're all aware, COVID-19 and it's kind of brought risk mitigation to the forefront. So just briefly, oops, the kind of the impact was dependency on China as being the world's factory. So China is actually producing 28.4% of the total global manufacturing output. You see U.S., 16.6%. So really, China is the factory of the world, or world's factory. And what happened in COVID-19 is that a lot of times your tier 1 supplier was not affected, but it got your tier 2 or your tier 3 supplier. So you might not be sourcing from China, but your tier 1 supplier might be or was. They also, in the COVID-19, what we found out, a lot of companies, they lack the end-to-end visibility of their global supply chain. So they really didn't, know where the second and third tier suppliers were, or all the kind of the logistics and everything involved. Of course, with the COVID-19, there was a big drop in demand, cancel orders, but really the thing was a shift in customer buying. Okay, customers went to buying online. There was really a shift from buying commercial to buying individual. So instead of buying in bulk or buying for a commercial use, all of a sudden you got more people buying. They're staying at home. They're buying for their household. Non-discretionary items, they kind of fell off. People were just trying to buy the focus on the essentials. Okay. Sorry, my keyboard is not working as it should. I keep hitting the wrong. Very sorry. Got to figure out how to. But anyway, so based on this, of course, a lot of companies are looking at to reshore or not. So in a recent study done by Thomas Industrial Survey, 54% of companies say they're likely, very likely, or extremely likely to look at reshoring. So kind of interesting, that 54% say they're thinking about reshoring. So 46% are fine with the way they are. And what we think we'll see a different strategy though. Is China plus one. So setting up a factory or resource in another part of another Asian country, so that way you migrate the single country risk. So if you just depend on one country, if that country is affected, then that really shuts down your supply chain. So a lot of the strategy now is looking at China plus one. Okay. The plus one maybe being potential Asian sites such as Thailand, Malaysia, the Philippines, or Vietnam. A lot of companies now are looking at India and even possibility Cambodia getting into the picture there. So there are definitely alternatives in Asia if you want to go the plus one route in Asia. I think a lot of companies are probably going this way. Is the plus one being cross-sourced, being reshoring. So at least reshore the capability back in in North America. Okay. So reshoring, you get back to your domestic and regional market. Set up a factory in North America, Europe. Europe, there's definitely a look at Eastern Europe because of lower cost structure, such as Poland. Right. So that's, so the people looking at, our companies looking at different strategy now, not to be so dependent on China. So I don't know if you've heard the term, but the term they've been using a lot with the, about the COVID-19, I see news and different reports and everything, is they're talking about the black swan. Okay. The black swan is a metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise. It's a major effect, right? And what it's based on is that for many years, they did not think a black swan existed. Okay. Then all of a sudden, black swans were discovered. So it changed, that it was very rare, but they actually did exist. Now I'm thinking maybe the next black swan might be the we get the Bigfoot instead of the black swan, whatever. But it's something that you presume doesn't happen, then all of a sudden you find it. This theory was developed by Nassim Taleb, and it explains that a disproportionate profile, hard to predict rare events that you can't really prepare for. So it's something that's out of the normal expectations, which is what COVID-19 was. You can't really define probability of it happening. It's so rare. And the psychological biases, it blinds people. You don't think it can happen. So the black swan theory is, unexpected events of large magnitude and consequences that, and they dominate the role in history. So, the COVID-19 has definitely dominated the world over the last, I guess, almost 6 months now, or close to it. All right. So the black swan, it's a stream of outliers. It plays a large role in irregular occurrences. So the COVID-19 was definitely, a black swan. So, COVID-19 being a black swan, and as I just described a black swan, we can't really predict that. But what we can, do is develop readiness for, a new term is kind of about, or not really new, but VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So, the VUCA concept came in, 1987. and refer to the Cold War. So it's just, it's, preparing, for, these four occurrences. Oops. So what the VUCA does to your supply chain, is a volatility. So you got your demand variability, okay? And what the effect is an unpredictable rate of changes affecting the demand side of your supply chain, okay? So volatility is that, we definitely see day to day, in most industries, is that your demand variability is what creates a lot of havoc in the manufacturing world. Uncertainty, again, demand, your manufacturing process, delays, quality, lead time, and supply uncertainty. Is your supply going to deliver on time? Is the supply going to be 100%, good quality? These are, stuff you don't know. So what it leads to, you can have part shortages. You can shut your manufacturing down. You might miss customer orders. If you miss customer orders, you're definitely going to have dissatisfied customers. Complexity, is the very inputs of from inbound and outbound logistics, your sales process, production engineering, just all the process, the different processes. But in particular, the effect is, you get a large amount of components in your system. So you have to deal with a lot more complexity. Yes. Can you still see my screen okay? I just got a message pop up. Everything okay?
We still see that. That's okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Ambiguity is, just decision making. Unknown possible outcomes. Not really understand the fundamentals of the principle of drive, and particularly, the ambiguity goes into the risk mitigations. It's not really understanding the threats, or you conceptualizing the threats and the opportunities before they pass you by, or before they stop your business. Okay, that's what VUCA is, and how it can impact your supply chain, on a day to day. So, instead of us kind of being, very much concerned about the black swan, or, the next black swan, really, the focus here is that, how do we deal with this VUCA in our day to day? If we learn how to deal with it day to day, then we'll definitely be prepared for the next black swan. Okay, so risk mitigation, risk management. So risk, a risk is just to expose someone or something of value to danger, harm, or loss. Mitigation is the action reducing the severity of the activity to risk. So risk management is identifying, evaluating, and prioritizing the risk and controlling the probability. Business continuity is about having a plan to deal with the difficult situations that your organization can that can cause disruption. And business continuity management is the management process that identifies the threats, impacts on the business, and a framework to build organizational resiliency. So a recent trend said, many companies are actually kind of afraid to assess their business continuity compliance. It's kind of like, it's better, to keep put the head in the sand than actually know the truth. So, a lot of companies are not really, facing up to what the risks are to their supply chain. and they're, like I said, they're not really wanting to deal with it. Also, the trend says that, a lot of companies really don't have the tools or know how to go about measuring their resiliency to risk. And that's what I want to show some simple ways in today's workshop, how to actually do a self-assessment. Majority of organizations do not have a clear picture of where they stand and where the weaknesses or strengths. I'll talk a little bit about it later, about doing a SWOT, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. In resource time is that, again, the companies don't really put in the effort to build the resiliency that they need, really. Risk mitigation, is taking the steps to reduce the adverse effects. And actually, there's 4 types of risk mitigation strategies and actually, so risk mitigation is what steps you want to reduce the adverse effects. And the type of strategy you choose really needs to match your business strategy. Okay. So one risk is just to accept it. Okay. Another strategy is to avoid do what you can to avoid the risk altogether. A strategy is the transference, is to really transfer the risk to a different source. And then a final one, style strategy, is limitation. So that's the 4 risk mitigation strategies, which I'll talk about a little bit here. Risk acceptance is kind of a little bit about sticking your head in the sand a little bit. It's it's just not really doing anything. It's just that you determine that the cost of risk management options outweigh the cost of the risk. So if you think like, oh, I need to have more inventory, but the cost of inventory is not worth the potential risk, then I just accept the risk and move on. Yeah. So again, the risk acceptance is really not wanting to spend money on avoiding risk, that might not, does not have a high possibility of occurring. So it's kind of build, it's just saying, okay, I'll deal with the circumstances when they happen, and that should be part of my business. Risk avoidance is really the opposite of it. So it's taking action to avoid any exposure to risk whatsoever. So it's saying, I want to make a 100% plan that the risk will not disrupt my supply chain. And definitely, risk avoidance would be the most expensive way, because this is saying that, hey, I'm looking at all possible disruptions, and I'm putting in countermeasures for everyone. Transference, is really handing off the risk to a willing third party. So you can outsource certain operations, certain customer service or payroll services. But you're not really avoiding the risk. You're just transferring the risk to another company. And if it's not really a part of your core competency, it might be good to outsource that, because that will allow you more time to focus on what your core competencies are. Risk limitation is the most common, and actually the one I think is the most logical. All right. So so the strategy there is to employ a bit of risk acceptance along the with risk avoidance. Okay, so you're saying that hey, I'll I'm willing to accept a certain amount of risk, but in certain areas, I want to make sure that I 100% avoid it. So, and when you talk about the risk limitation, how you do identify what you want to try to avoid and what you're willing to accept. Now, I don't know how many are familiar with ABC stratification, but I think this is extremely important. And being a consultant and working in a lot of companies, I find that most companies are not utilizing this, or maybe not totally understanding it. Okay, but the ABC stratification goes back to the Pareto principle. In the Pareto principle, you might know it as the 80-20 rule. But most importantly, Dr. Joseph Saran, he coined it as the vital few and the trivial many. And that's kind of the key. Is if you want to do limitation, if I want to avoid with the vital few, and maybe with the trivial many, maybe I'm willing to take a risk. So the 80-20 rule means that that applies that anything there are fewer than 20% that are vital, and the 80% that are trivial. Some I'll work out 80-20, but that kind of ratio is pretty good. All right. So if you want to do your limitation, your avoidance, you would want to focus really on the 20%. So maybe you take your 80% that are trivial and say, okay, I can live with some risk there, but I can't live with any risk on the 20%. And just a little background of the 80-20 rule. This came out in the 19th century. That Pareto found that 80% of Italy's wealth came from 20% of the population, and 20% of the so 20% of the company's products is equal to 80% of the revenue. So that's where the 80-20 rule came from. But again, I really like the way that Dr. Duran broke it down to being the vital few and the trivial many. So inventory management is one of the best places I see for using the ABC or the 80-20 rule. You use it for stratifying your energy, your inventory usage consumption. So like your A's is 20% of your SKUs, 80% demand, right? So this is where you want to do your limitation. This is where the focus should be. This is what you want to avoid. You don't want any risk to disrupt these 20 SKUs that actually are 80% of your demand, which also means this, most likely it's 80% of your revenue. So if I can focus my limitation on just the top 20% of my product, and if provide a risk avoidance there, then I'll get the biggest bang for my effort. The the C's being somewhere around 70% of my SKUs, it's only 5% of my demand. So if I'm willing to to take some risk here, maybe transfer some of this, outsource or whatever, then that's a good area to look at. So my risk mitigation, I want to be focused on my A's, my my vital few. Okay, there's a few essentials, in having a risk mitigation plan, and so you need to assess your current process and controls. Understand what the individual risks are, the rating of each risk, and likelihood of it occurring, and a plan of action. Okay, so assess the current process control. Define the current process and the risk assessment. The few ways to define the current process. One way that I find very useful is a SIPOT. The SIPOT stands for suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customer. So what you're doing is you're breaking down your different elements of your process and your supply chain into the suppliers. Okay, so to look at this example here, I call it this is my my business process continuity example. So I got my suppliers here. So supplier ABC, so all my different suppliers. The input would be what commodity they're providing. The process would be my different assembly steps. Output, would be the output of that's just going to be assembly in process or WIP. And then the customer assembly step 2 process 1, step 1, the customer is going to be step 2. Okay. So here I can identify what my suppliers are, what my inputs are, and inputs could be different stuff. I mean, it doesn't have to be material, but of course, when we're looking at supply chain, probably the most important input we're going to have is going to be the resources for the manufacturing. Right? So this is a good way to define, excuse me, where we need to be looking at the different opportunities in the where we could have disruptions at. Okay. Alternate method, one I really like also is value stream mapping. Won't cover that today. Value stream mapping is definitely a lot more complicated, but can be very useful in many ways. But the side plot might be kind of easier for organizations to get started, identifying particularly what their inputs are, and then associating the risk with those inputs. Okay, another way to really do a risk assessment of the process is a FMEA. This might be a tool that you're familiar with, failure mode and effect analysis. And a lot of time we don't think about using this on processes or projects or whatever, but it's actually a great tool to use here. Yeah. So just a picture there, but I'll get in detail here. So here's the top part here shows the whole the form with all the kind of what you're looking at, and then here's the different elements of the FMEA. Excuse me. So you kind of look at it here. The first step here is assessing the current process. All right, so when you're doing FMEA, one of the first things you can do is over here on the far left, you're going to identify what the processes are. Okay. Then you risk the individual risk. So on the FMEA, you got potential failure. Okay. So here's my process. So where would my failure be? Would it be a supplier or whatever? I mean, you can take this forward, and again, like I said, forward than just the inputs, but really look, and be very honest about your assessment. Where are the potential failures, internal and external? Okay. So what's the likelihood of occurring? Okay, so on the FMEA, we got potential causes, and then we got the occurrence. So what causes it to go wrong? Okay, so what causes it to go wrong? We tell you how often it occurs. The impact if it occurs. So on the FMEA, we consider that to be the severity. Okay, so if this happens, how severe is the severity of the occurrence? In the controls, on the FMEA, we look at current controls. And look at can we detect it? Do we have current means to detect it if it does go wrong? And then the plan of action. So the plan of action is just again another part of the FMEA. Just the action recommended, who's responsible, and the action to be taken. So when you do this on a FMEA, you actually come out with RPN, which is a risk priority number. The risk priority number, you're taking the severity times the possibility of occurrence times the detection, and that gives you a priority. Right? So that number would be the area that would be your top priority to look at. And after you did your actions here, you would recalculate the RPN to see what improvements you made. So here's just a few examples of FMEA. Excuse me. So the first one I did here was on loss capability of self-manufacture. This just there's some examples I pulled out of the ones I've done. But a factory fire, detection could be safety walks. But here's on the far right, you see the composite score. Okay, so you see a score for severity, likelihood that happened, and how likely are you to detect it, before it actually got to be a major issue or got to the customer. Right, so then the bottom here, looking at critical suppliers. Okay, suppliers in North America. Now here you see one composite score is 500. So that's the raw material supply. The potential cause being tier 2 suppliers, having missed shipments. Hopefully you get advance warning that behind, but maybe not. So so unless you get advance warning, there's no detection. That makes it a very high risk. Right. So your raw material supply, I think, will always be one of your top risks, and particularly would be about that second tier or maybe even the third tier supplier. Then the last kind of example I just share here is on the in this particular case, we did have critical suppliers that were in Southeast Asia. Right. So you can see the composite score for all of these are very high. It's the ways to the failure mode, the cause and effect, same. But you're going through it, and then based on the priority here is that's where I need to put my focus for my risk mitigation. Very sorry. So another way to look at the current process and individual risk is maybe a technique that you're familiar with but never thought about using for risk mitigation. And and that's the fishbone diagram. Like I said, probably the majority of people on the call webinar here are familiar with the fishbone diagram, but not really thought about using it outside of maybe normal problem solving. But so a fishbone diagram. So you start out with a problem. So the problem could be here, based on the FMEA that I just showed there. If I got a single source offshore tier 1 supplier, so that's probably a high priority to look at. So on this particular one, I looked at excuse me, information technology, environmental, operational, political, social. I can't see that one there. Sorry. So I would have my skeleton as such, and then going through brainstorm, I'll start looking at what the what could be the causes to have a supply interruption. So like operational, you're looking at key staff retention, tier 1, tier 2 supplier interruption, factory fire, labor strike, environmental, could be, Mother Nature. When the time I did this one, I was just got through with SARS. I'm not sure how big the SARS was, epidemic was in the U.S. I know it did affect the U.S. quite a bit. Being in Asia, the SARS was a major disruption. Information technology, cyber attacks, sabotage. On the economical, you got terrorists, foreign currency, bankruptcy, social, political unrest, criminal activity, and then political, war, terrorists, embargoes, and just in my time doing this, I've seen major eruptions from tier 2 suppliers. Been involved where factories or suppliers have been shut down because of fires. Definitely being in Asia, I've seen all the different environmental ones. Political unrest. I spent 3 years with a Fortune 20 company working in it was in Thailand. And political unrest was probably our #1 issue because they would shut down the ports and close the highways. I have been involved during the the Gulf War, where definitely impacted what we could do and how we could support our offshore operations. And then the one in purple here is just kind of some of the secondary impacts I've seen. I think it's interesting, kind of this one, flooding, something we don't think too much about. But like I said, with this Fortune 25 manufacturer, had a cash cow product shutdown for 3 months due to flooding at a local supplier. And the supplier just was packaging, just cardboard. So it was a single source supplier. They were local. Excuse me. They're only about 200 miles away, but because of the flood, they were totally inaccessible. This was this was in Thailand, so they didn't really have the infrastructure, to kind of get stuff there and get it out. But just to show, because it had a single source for a very low product like cardboard or packaging, it actually shut down the factory and a cash cow product for 3 months. So this particular factory built, it shipped out over 1 million gloves a day, surgical gloves. So you shut down for 3 months. That's the calculation ahead, but 90 days times 1 million per day. That's quite an impact on revenue, and also getting the needed supplies to the surgeons and to the hospital. So again, quite an impact there. So this is actually another real case that I did. So we also looked at self-manufacturing in Thailand, and as I said before, they had a lot of political unrest there, and this was a Fortune 25 company. So the board of directors was very concerned. Why something happened in this self-manufacturing in Thailand, which was the single source for manufacturing of this product. Why did something happen to that? So again, this is a cash cow. This one plant produced over $300 million in revenue a year. So of course the board of directors was a little concerned about being involved. I actually did this fishbone to help drive to where we need to go. So this product portfolio was only one site. Okay, so that's definitely #1 issue. So if something happens to this site, this manufacturing site, there is no way there is no second source for this product. So again, kind of redundant here, but single source supplier to the customers. Like I said, political unrest was a major issue, and as I talked about before, the flooding, and suppliers being cut off, the port, not being able to get to the port or the highway. And then the last one was labor availability, particularly the cost. They were For political reasons, I guess similar to the U.S., they wanted to drive the minimum wage up, and then that was definitely hurting the competitiveness of having a factory in Thailand. Oh, I forgot the second one here, last one I mean, is that also this particular company was on the verge of losing its tax break. So unless we did something that, there's a chance that we could lose 50% or 100% of the current tax rate that we're getting, which is quite high. So what the actually of this fishbone here, the actual results, what we did was one, we decided, okay, we'll keep the primary manufacturing in Thailand. And what we did is establish a joint venture in a different country, and we call it cross-sourcing, and I'll discuss that a little bit more later in detail. The thing was, we actually established a second source, which was a joint venture in a different country. And we devised, because of the potential of having a port and the political unrest, is we devised alternate transportation routes. And I think the key here, where I got highlighted here, and we validated this. We didn't wait till we needed it, but we would occasionally, once a month or whatever, actually use these transportation routes. They might be a little bit more expensive, but that's the only way we knew that these alternative routes were viable, was actually going through and using them. On the flooding one I talked about before, we actually developed a second packaging supplier within a few miles of the factory. And actually, by developing, we actually the location, bought the equipment, everything, and just had a third party run it for us. Okay, and then really just kind of the standard stuff is we also focus on productivity, yields, and consumable savings, to offset the rise in wages. So we couldn't stop the wages being raised, but we could offset that by improving our productivity, improving our yields, and cutting down on the amount of consumables that we're using. So again, this is actually a kind of simple approach. It was brainstorming with the leaders of the company when we did this, but it actually it drove very good results and achieved what we wanted to do. Excuse me. So another tool to look at is a SWOT business assessment. So you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you look at your strengths. How does it affect your your purchasing power? Your and this is looking at SWOT versus your supply chain. So what's your strengths on purchasing, mitigating the supply risk, inventory management, whatever. What are your weaknesses? So again, you got mitigating supply risk on both sides. I mean, is it a strength or is it a weakness? And then you look at your opportunities for improvement, and then what are the threats to your supply chain. So here's just a sample of one, just to show the strengths. You say, okay, my strength is lean manufacturing. Well, if you got lean manufacturing, the vulnerability there is probably going to be minimal inventory. All right. So if you're lean manufacturing, then you're minimizing probably how much inventory you have. Just in time being a strength, but at the same time that means you got no buffers. Strength, no incoming inspection, but that could be supplier quality risk. So in all of these, when you look at the strengths, you also have to look at the vulnerability. Okay, and also like on the weakness side, too much inspection, from what it does, that could give you false confidence. weaknesses could be, minimal equipment, which, could lead, if you have a breakdown, it could be a stoppage. No outsourcing, what if you had, a factory fire? So again, won't go through all of these, but this just show you is kind of, sitting down thinking about, what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and what the vulnerability to your business and supply chain, comes from this. So business continuity management, here's a typical supply chain. You got tier 2 supplier, tier 1 supplier, factory. Probably have a distribution center. Maybe you have a retail, maybe you sell a retail outlet, and then to the end customer. So the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, for your business continuity management, definitely this is where you want to look at your ABC stratification. Right? So it's very improbable that you can really look at all tier 2 suppliers. It's just too much, and maybe the risk is just not worth it. But if you do an ABC, you look at your A suppliers, then I definitely think you want to look at their suppliers. You want to look at suppliers of your A suppliers, okay? And then you want to look at countermeasures. How
تقريبا الجميع وصل ما عدا بعد شوية سيف وعيسى ودينا.
I'm sorry?
محمد الملا also. So محمد, عيسى.
Dr. Rad, you are unmuted, so that you are.
سيف أيضا still not there. البقية كله موجود.
If you don't have a question, please mute yourself so as not to interrupt the speaker. Thank you.
Okay. So excuse me there. Again, so we're looking at how to look at the risk of tier 1 and 2 suppliers. So inventory coverage and process lead times is definitely a key factor there. So on the end of the supply chain, again, you go back to ABCs. So you probably can't really be focused on everything, but you can be focused on the vital few sales that actually might be 80% of your revenue. Excuse me. And then look at the factory and distribution center. Again, I go back to the ABC stratification. I can't really, I keep talking about and stressing it, but that is just a fundamental principle that everybody should be using in really all their kind of business management. But when it comes to risk management, this is just huge. It's unless you really want to focus, on total avoidance. If you're going to do limitation, then you got to have a good plan for your ABC stratification. So you got your risk assessment and countermeasures, and of course you'll be looking at inventory coverage and replenishment times. You need to be looking at your sourcing landscape, your procurement strategy. Another thing to think about is assess your time to recovery. So again, this should be on ABC. So if you were to have this risk, to happen, if you had this disruption to happen, how much time does it take to recover? Your time to recover should be quite different from your ABCs. I mean, you want your time to recover from your A's to be, 0, minimal, whatever. Again, maybe on your C's you can take a little bit longer, and also the scalability. How can you ramp up on different areas if need be. So really, so when you look at your business continuity management plan, these are the kind of key factors you want to take in consideration. And then, to me, it's always going to be based. Everything is looking at continuous improvement, improving your productivity, and always optimizing your inventory. So going back to if you look at the countermeasures, one of my number one countermeasures that I like, and I don't see enough companies doing it or getting into it, is cross-sourcing. Right. So cross-sourcing is that what you do is you have multiple suppliers for the same commodity type. So what you're having is that each supplier can be a backup to the other supplier in case of a disruption. So show an example down here. Let's just say this is this is hypothetical, but actually fairly real. So you got metal part fabrication, and they're actually producing 5,000 different SKUs. So based on this, ABC, A's you got 1,000 SKUs, B's 500 SKUs, and C's 3,500 SKUs. So in cross sourcing, you have two suppliers, okay, supplier Y and supplier X. Let's say for supplier Y, they get 500 SKUs, which is 35% of demand. Then they get 50 A SKUs but they're only going to do 5% of the demand. B's, they're breaking it up to C's. On the supplier X, the only kind of commonality between supplier X and supplier Y is the A's. So supplier X is going to do 500 SKUs, and the supplier Y is going to do 500 SKUs separately or individually. Sorry, I got notes popping up there that kind of distracted me. But the 500 A's are that supplier, the ones that are supplier X is doing 500 SKUs of a lower demand that Y is doing. Okay, so on the A's, there's cross functions. Like supplier X is doing the majority of one, Y is doing the majority of one, but they put lower demand for the same A's. B's and C's are actually at one supplier. So, what kind of summarize this? This is to fabricate all A's.
You have the right? You can't mute everybody, please. As the host, you can't mute everybody.
Anyway, the capabilities to fabricate all A's. So X and Y both have capability to do all A's at a different volume. They do all A's side, but there's no cross-sourcing at the C's, right? That gives you sourcing of two sources of all your A's, and your final few.
Right.
ورنا هناك مش فاضي لك بسرعة.
Sorry, Jafar, I can't really hear you.
You can mute everybody. I think as a host you can mute everybody.
You're the host.
I transfer that to you.
No, I got well.
I think it's calm now. Maybe just.
I can go through and do individually. So I actually am the host, okay?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay, I think we're okay now.
Yes, I think so.
All
Sorry.
right. I'm sorry for the disrespect. Okay, so imagine the sub-tier suppliers is kind of key. A sub-tier supplier is a supplier who delivers to a direct supplier of the customer or manufacturer. So heavily reliance on first supply is dangerous. One, it really weakens the control of costs, reduces the ability to stay on top of technology, and shifts in demand. Excuse me, it's difficult to ensure suppliers operating in a socially and environmental sustainable factory, and OEEs to forge relationships with select numbers of a sub-tier. So the main kind of point here is that for your A suppliers to A suppliers, you need to really kind of OEMs must create a strong relationship with those few suppliers that are critical to their business. And I think very few companies are really getting into managing their sub-tier suppliers. Another counter local is a delayed differential or postponement. So I mean, it's like a supply chain where you want to make your product as generic as possible on the the upstream, and then on the downstream, you can differentiate at the end product. So try to keep it as generic as possible through the supply chain, and then make the differentiation as the last step. That way, you can address final demand, and even if your forecast is not good, if you're only doing your final end product differentiation at the last, then you can adjust to changes in demand. This again by postponing, we actually identify what the product in our product will be. Then you have the reduce the risk of producing the wrong product. Modularization is another way to offset this by standardizing parts for flexibility and variety. Using the same items to build a variety of finished goods, and developing a planning bill of material where you have an engineering bill of material, but then a planning one allows you to kind of configure at the end state. So business continuity management, building resiliency. Resiliency is a capacity to recover from difficulties. How tough can you be? Supply chain resiliency is the ability of the supply chain to anticipate, create plans to avoid, and how fast can they recover from disruptions to the functionality of the supply chain. In 2017, Bain company, consulting company looked at, is how to improve your supply chain. And what they found is that, companies that take a strategic approach to their supply chain, produce better results. They improved their output by 25%. They improved their inventory turns by 40%. on time and full, at 96%, decrease the stock shortages by 10 to 30%. So, I mean, these are all very good performance. And what that did, includes the increased gross margins by 6 to 10%. So what this did, the study found, which is kind of common sense, is that doing this, they definitely increased their market share, right? But more importantly, to our discussion here, what it did, it created resilience, okay, by being able to improve the output, the inventory and everything. They actually made them a lot more resilient company and allow them to be able to, respond more quickly to any kind of disruption happen. And then if you talk about building resiliency, the basic is safety stock. So safety stocks, the inventory that you cover, and to take care of excess demand, expectations, whatever. Safety stock again, it goes back to ABC stratification. So your safety stock, you're looking at demand uncertainty, supply uncertainty, and you have a certain amount of stock to take care of that. I won't go into it today, but I mean, if anybody's interested, they can email I'll give you more information. But a great way to do this is a K-Max, K-Min combine scheme. This is actually probably the simplest combine system that uses safety stock. It's a very effective, simple to implement. So, and the basic to building resiliency is having safety stock, but of course, you want to have the right amount, and you don't want to be putting too much money into your inventory. So, the baseline really for your building resiliency to me is the lean process. You building blocks, your flow, standards, and culture. Your flow, you got, the key one is pull and replenishment, cellular manufacturing, line balancing, changeover to one-piece flow. Standards, standardized work, a big one is visual management, error proofing, and having a strong culture. The culture being, workplace organization or 5S, proper training, totally quality management, really kind of important is supply integration, and then the last fundamental really is continuous improvement. But really, if you got a very strong lean program, you won't be very much on your way, to create and build a resiliency by just your lean or your operational excellence program by itself. And then the quote here from Mark Twain I like is continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. So a lot of times we don't want to do change until we have the perfect answer or the perfect solution, and that's really probably not the right way to go. The way to do it is to make incremental changes along the way, and always be an improvement. So really, that kind of sums up what I wanted to cover. Any questions?
Thank you, Ray. Thank you very much for the very valuable information. So at this time, I would like to open the floor for any questions. But for those who came late, welcome. I would like to welcome you again to our virtual workshop. So if you have any question, please mute yourself and ask your question. Otherwise, we prefer that everybody stays muted so as not to disturb the others. Thank you. So if you have a question, please go ahead. No questions? I would like to ask you a question, Ray. People start thinking about risk after the COVID-19, right? So,
Right.
how do you think, I mean, the companies in the US or maybe worldwide, I mean, they are prepared for anything? You mentioned it's not only the COVID, I mean, even the flooding or any other disasters. Can you comment on that, please?
No, I think that's, again, I think it's a real opportunity, and I think most companies don't want to think about it. But I mean, one of the recent companies I worked with, I asked them, so what is your, they were a single source manufacturer. I said, what is your continuity plan? And they said, well, there's an empty factory, down the road here. We can rent that factory and we can buy new equipment. Well, that's not a business continuity plan. I mean, so if you did that, the time to recover would be years, okay? And most businesses cannot survive years of being out of production. So I think people don't think about it until it occurs. Because if we apply these kind of principles we're talking about here, a lot of companies would not have been hurt that bad by COVID-19. The real pain came particularly from the second tier suppliers that they didn't realize were doing business in China.
Location, so cost savings can be very significant. And then there's no electrical bill to pay either.
Sorry?
They're also good for the environment by reducing demand for newer or larger electrical utility systems and acquisition of more fossil fuels to run them.
I really didn't hear the comment or question too much. It broke up for me. Sorry.
You can use the chat if you'd like, if it's not clear. You can use the chat, or you can repeat your question, please.
I think it was a comment, but I didn't quite hear it. It was breaking up on me.
SHSU. So you can repeat your comment again, please. Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? Any comments?
Mr. Ray, this is Wei Wen.
Please go ahead, Wei Wen.
I have a question about the FMEA, the failure mode and effect analysis. Could you please back to your slides? There is a chart about how to assess the failure and its effect, and there is one column indicating the composite score of that. Still a previous one. Yeah, this one. Can you see that? There is a composite score of that, the column. So I would like to know how those composite scores were figured.
Well, it's taking the severity times the likelihood times the detection. Okay, so
okay, it's just the simple multiplication of those severity, likelihood, and detection, right?
Right. I mean, kind of the key is kind of like severity. This can be totally subjective, or you can't actually quantitate it. You can say that severe means that I'll miss one shipment, or severe means a defect of 10,000 or whatever. So the severity, likelihood, and detection can be a little bit subjective, but if you're doing a really good job, you can put a quantitative attribute on there to actually give you a score. But again, these are all done in, as a consensus, and I did use quantitative, and so yeah, but the composite score is just 10, 4, and 9. Now, the composite score itself doesn't really mean anything, but it's a reference saying that, as long as everything's subjective or whatever, so 500 is more severe or more risk than a 360. 500 itself is nothing out. It's no way to benchmark or whatever. It's just a comparison of the risk that you're looking at. So the 500 just tells you a priority, not really. I'm trying to say it's not nothing you can kind of benchmark. I need to have a score of 100. It's just saying 500 is my highest priority to go after.
Okay. About the scores on this chart, is this a ratings from a single expert, or you would like to suggest we use a team of experts to rate?
Always a team.
Okay.
A team of your stakeholders, and it should always try to be a cross-functional team. To get different different views, different perspective on it. But the way I do it is I allow everybody in the room to vote, and then I take the mode of the group. So I just take what the most of the consensus of the group agrees on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments?
I would like to ask Raymond a question, if you don't mind, Jafar.
Please go ahead, Dr. Wright.
Thanks, Raymond, for the presentation. I actually missed a good part of it, and I hope if there's possibility for you to send me the presentation, that I'll be thankful. Just a very, very simple thing we always encounter when we deal with the supply chain. Probably you already highlighted that we cannot operate the supply chain in a reactive mode due to the complexity plus the timeline that everything has to take some significant time when you take any change or make any change across the supply chain, from supplier all the way to distributors and to the marketplace. However, when it comes to the bullwhip effect, I'm not sure if you talked about this at the start of your presentation. Is there any specific risk mitigation techniques to deal with the bullwhip effect across the supply chain?
Well, to me, again, I said a few times, about the ABC stratification. To me, you definitely got to focus on your A's. And one of the simplest steps to take is the inventory. That's the reason I didn't really talk about it too much, but I mean that the K-max, K-min, if a company would just implement a robust K-max, K-min plan on their A SKUs, that would really mitigate a huge amount of their issues. Okay, because on the safety stock, you take into account your supplier reliability and then also your demand reliability. So you're building in the two key factors. So you're building in a safety factor based on your supplier, internal, external, delivering on time, and then you're building in a factor for for the demand being increasing or whatever. So just by really focusing on your inventory management or your inventory optimization solves a lot of problems.
Okay, thanks. It's actually because if you like the whole lean supply chain kind of approach is trying to minimize an inventory across safety stock across the supply chain. So that kind of, let's say, approach, which is based on minimizing the utilization of resources as much as we can, and not being reliant more on the inventory. So that a lot of time it clashes with many of the strategies that we built in across the supply chain in order to mitigate the risks and to be prepared. So we want to be prepared in one hand, at the same time we want to be lean on the other hand. So this kind of balance, what is your thoughts about the balance between being lean at the same time being prepared or for any kind of risks?
Well, also it goes back to, we're talking about, so you need, the strategy there would be your limitations, okay? So to me, you want to focus again on your A's. So when you do your inventory is based on your lead time or your replenishment time, right? So that's where the focus has got to be. So focus can't just be on the amount of inventory, but your amount of inventory is dependent on your demand and your lead time. Okay, so the demand you can't control, but your lead time you can control, right? By improving your operations. Okay? So you're right. I mean, if you're going, you can't really go completely lean and really mitigate all the risk. That's impossible. Okay, so you got to have it's a counterbalance there, or you have to kind of there's a balance between inventory and risk. But if you statistically calculate it and you focus on reducing your replenishment and lead times, then that makes the impact a lot less.
Okay, thank you. Just the last note. Just what do you think about the new technologies that are actually being utilized heavily now across the supply chain to collect like live data, to apply data analytics, starting with the IoT or blockchains, and how is that going to affect the risk analysis and the risk mitigation across the supply chain?
Okay, I guess I'm a little bit old school. Okay. So I mean, I know that digital transformation is very important, and data is very important. But I think you can get too reliant on that. If your processes are very flexible and your processes are resilient, that way you can be responsive. So I mean, the data is always, the data sometimes gonna be good and sometimes gonna be bad or whatever, right? I mean, I said, being an engineer, I love data, but sometimes we focus too much on data and not really focus on the process. If the process is very efficient, set up right, then it's responding to actual demand. Forget the data. It's just saying if it consumed it yesterday, then I need to make it today. So you're actually responding to consumption, which is in a way data, but you're not looking at data out in the long term. You're responding to immediate data. What was consumed?
Okay. Thanks, Raymond.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan, for excellent questions. Any other questions from the rest of the participants? Any other questions, comments? No questions and comments. I think that will bring our session to an end.